I wanted to start talking about this delicious meat because I woke up hungry and I wanted to go ahead and get something to eat before I take my walk. So I wanted you to see, I start off with a hamburger loaf. I basically just take an entire package of this meat that I get from Millbrook Farms, or what they call it Millbrook Farms, but it's Big Mo cattle that I get my meat from, and have it cut and processed at Johnston's meat packing over in Monticello, Florida, or Monticello, however you pronounce it. I still can't remember. People have told me it's one way or the other, and I always forget. But this is by far the best ground beef I have ever had. And all that rolling around on the plate is mostly fat, because this is as I ordered it, full fat. I said, don't remove any fat. Put all the fat in there. It's delicious. Gives you lots of energy. Sam wants some. I'll give you something, Sam. Give me just a minute. Oh. Speaking of Sam and these dogs and carnivore crisps, oh my God, the dog treats. Sam's a crack addict when it comes to carnivore crisps. If I can get some of the video my wife took of her giving him carnivore crisps, you would just be like, is that drugs in there? Because he looks like he's looking for he's jonesing for that meat. I can understand that, because I've been jonesing for this meat. Oh, it's so good. Eating hamburger is not the same when you've got good meat. And you know, just talking about this topic of eating meat is so foreign to our thinking right now, because of what we've been told all of our lives by organizations and health food companies, and even now the government. Well, I mean, for a long time, basically since the 1980s, the government has been telling us what they thought was the truth about food, or maybe it was a straight up lie. I don't know which, but I think I know where it stems from. And I want to talk about some of that this morning. So this will be an introduction to some controversial thoughts that I'd like to discuss. And hopefully I won't put my foot in my mouth too much. I have a tendency to do that occasionally, because I know I'm not right about everything. But I do know we live in strange times. And I'd like to talk to you about those times. Now that I put some of this meat away for Katie to have when she wakes up, I let her sleep this morning. I give Sam what he's been waiting for, his chance to. Oh, see, I don't even like to leave any meat left, because I love it all so much. And I could just lick all this fat up and just enjoy it too. But my dogs have got to eat good too, so I at least give them the scraps. He'll clean that plate off. I usually add some of that to his dog food too. If I have like there's a lot of fat left over in the air fryer. I know there's other things you can do with the fat, but when you have 4 dogs and you want to treat them good, I get them dog food that's made with real beef, and I'll add some real fat to it. They love it. They love it. Whew, it's a cold morning. Let's see, what do I got here? I've done 1.5 miles at 15 minutes and 24 seconds average this morning, and that's going to allow me to segue into what I want to talk about some, I think, because one of the things I was thinking as I was walking is like, first of all, why am I walking so fast this morning? And the first thing that comes to mind is that I want to say, by the way, good morning. How y'all doing today? The first thing that comes to mind is I want to say, well, it's because I ate that meat first thing this morning before I went walking. Many times I don't have my breakfast until after I've gone for my walk. And so I could easily just attribute it to that, because it benefits what I'm talking about with Lion Diet, and it would promote my channel. But I've got to point out, because I'm about honesty. I'm so tired of all the lies, and that's going to come back and talk about a lot what we're going to talk about today, is that if I were just to leave it at that and say, yep, it was the meat, that was what did it, I'd be lying. But
I would say that it's definitely a factor. The meat has been a factor in my ability to do any of this. But there's been other factors, as I've mentioned before. The psychological aspects of listening to things Jordan Peterson's helped me realize about myself is a big one overall for the diet. But let's just take the microcosm of this morning. Sam was walking much faster this morning. And now he did lick some of the fat off my plate, but he hasn't eaten his breakfast yet. So I don't know. It didn't make him walk any faster not having enough to eat. But he was like pulling me down the road. Normally he walks right beside me. And I was keeping up with him. And even with him stopping to pee every 30 to 45 seconds, I was still able to shave almost 2 minutes off of my average time of walking a mile for the first half of my walk. I'm walking a little slower now so that I can keep the camera steady. But, you know, that him pulling me was another factor. Another factor might be that it's 54 degrees outside and I'm freezing my, you know what's off. So that's got me walking a little quicker. The fact that I'm kind of juiced about what I want to talk about today has probably got me walking a little quicker. So there's a lot of factors that go into play. But I would still have to say the biggest contributing factor is the overall diet itself. And that's what's been amazing, because it's helped me to have a better body and a better mind. Now, I wasn't just somebody who was sedentary before this. I mean, I tried to get active, but it was like more of forcing myself to do that. And before that, I was studying to be a history professor. That's what I wanted to do. I studied history in college. I had to fight with my professors the whole way because most of them wanted to force ideological beliefs on me rather than talk about what actually happened in history. They were trying to force identity politics, and this group was good and that group was bad. But ultimately, human nature is what drives all of this stuff we call politics, or arguing over whether or not ivermectin is safe for you to take, or whether or not hydroxychloroquine is safe to take. And all just saying these things is probably going to get this video demonetized. But I'm tired of hushing myself because of what I think YouTube is going to do. But as I studied history, one of the things that I learned is that, you know, the United States has a really huge sway over the rest of the world economically and politically, even though the rest of the world wasn't always on board with what made America America. And mostly that was the free spirit, that ability to do things. I mean, the things that allowed the Wright brothers to create flight happened in the backdrop of a lot of freedom. I mean, I heard somebody say something the other day that was very profound, and I've heard it said similar ways. But like, if we were to invent the car today under modern regulatory principle, it wouldn't be allowed. You wouldn't be allowed to drive a car, not even with a driver's license. Oh, look at the pigs. Well, they just ran right through. That was fast. Glad they didn't run up on me. So just going walking can be dangerous. 4 wild pigs just ran by. But you know, if we were to listen to all these regulatory groups who tell us what we can and can't do and take their word as gospel, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to make any advancements. And what started all this was, I was watching the Hodge twins this morning talk about a pharmacist who had refused to fill some guy's ivermectin medication that he had gotten from his doctor. And I thought, what is it that gives that pharmacist the cojones to tell somebody who is prescribed a medicine by their doctor that he's not going to fill that medicine? Because this has been entrenched as the way we do things. The doctor prescribes it, then the pharmacy can give it, because all these drugs are so unsafe for us to take on our own and self-diagnose and whatnot. But then we find out that politics can drive the decisions of not only the pharmacist, but also the doctors. Well, that's a huge problem, And the question is even as I was watching Keith and what the hell's his name, the other brother, anyway, the Hodge twins talk about the issue with ivermectin. They were talking about what the FDA approves and what the FDA doesn't approve. I mean, maybe at one time, the FDA had some credibility. I mean, maybe their credibility was false to begin with, because when you go all the way back to what the American Heart Association did with vegetable oils and animal fats, starting with Ansel Keys in the 50s and 60s, you realize that they've been on the take since the beginning. They've been just going for whoever was going to pay them the most or fund their research or whatever. Maybe they had good intentions to begin with, just like I could do with this channel. If I decide I'm going to let the interest of a corporate sponsor adjust what I say is the truth, just because I need to have the money coming in, then I'm going to be going against what I even started doing this channel for to begin with. And that's not what I want to do. As a matter of fact, I've had a couple of more companies approach me about products to talk about. And one of them I'll reveal in a few months, because I told them up front, I said, look, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of what businesses offer. I'm skeptical of what companies offer to people to get healthy, because most of the time it just turns out to be snake oil. And I've done a great job on my own just eating meat, going against what I was preached to my whole life, that this is the way you're supposed to eat. And it's been like an awakening from a dream that I've been lied to my whole life, and I'm so tired of being lied to. Well, the FDA lies to us all the time. I mean, if we can't see by now that they're open to the highest bidder of whoever's going to get their product made, and that they're willing to, tweet that thing about ivermectin being a horse dewormer product, when they know damn good and well that it's been available for humans for a very long time, and it was even a Nobel Prize winning discovery that the antiparasitic could do what it did, then we've got to stop even looking to the FDA for anything. It's like they've been discredited. Where did this start with all these bureaucracies that we give so much credence to, when they've clearly become politicized? The World Health Organization has always been politicized. And yet we treat these entities that have acronyms for their names, like the FDA, WHO, we've given them so much credence that they're still the stamp of approval of whether or not we're going to buy something to eat or buy something to put in our body. And now that I've found this lifestyle has opened me up to a truth about health that goes against all of that, I even catch myself sometimes, like when I bought meat, if it wasn't FDA approved, I was a little leery of it because it was coming from Mexico or somewhere, and I didn't know how they were making their meat. But to be honest with you, I've come to find out that even in America, the way the meat processing is done a lot of times is really horrible. So that's why I've gone to my own way of finding a way to get meat that's healthy for me, and it's changed everything. I didn't need the FDA there to tell me to go see Miles at Big Mo's Cattle to get the healthy meat that I needed. But what I did need is a reason to go looking for Big Mo's Cattle. And because most of my life I have just gone to the store shelf and bought the meat that was there because I understood it to be safe, because the government said it was safe, that was the way I would keep going. Just like I've argued about for homeschooling, that most of us send our kids to school because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to send your kids to school. But then when you find out that they're being programmed rather than taught things, you got to rethink. You got to say, wait a minute, I've been believing a lie. I've got to do something different. And you got more people homeschooling now. So the question is how are we going to get away from having these established bureaucracies tell us what to do all the time? And I listen to some other secular hosts like Joe Rogan and Russell Brand, and I like a lot of the things they say, but like with Russell Brand, he misses the point on cronyism being the problem because he's still willing to demand for more regulation. The reason why cronyism works is that as soon as the government can regulate a business, the bigger business can buy influence because the government is made up of people, and those people are going to give credence to the laws that the ones who pay their bills are asking for. So big companies get laws on the books that make it hard for small companies or new startups to be able to grow. And instead of just letting the market decide, they actually have the regulations deciding the winners and losers. And that's where the FDA is a problem, and the CDC has become a problem. And so many of these government entities that are, we don't have any ability to vote them out because the politicians are who we vote for. But the politicians are the one that created these entities. If you go all the way back to the Wilson administration, you can see where it began, this management style of government, where they put groups and committees in charge of certain things that involve regulation of business. And then when those groups or committees make laws that don't work, or they come up with something that the people don't like, the politicians can just blame the bureaucratic entity that can't be fired, and then try to get reelected based on the fact that they didn't like what that committee did. But really, they're just not taking any responsibility for their lawmaking position. So, I mean, the hard thing about talking about all this is that it goes deep to a root of human nature, that we give too much trust to people in positions of authority. I'm not saying that you don't respect authority, but there's so much illegitimate authority out there right now that has nothing to do with what's constitutional, that we're setting a bad example as we let bureaucracies that are unelectable make our laws and run our country and run our lives and run our thinking about how we're going to put things in our body, whether it's a medicine or food. And yet at the same time, they're doubling down on telling us what we can and can't put in our body. At some point, we've all just got to start saying, no, I'm not listening to you anymore, because you're not telling me the truth, first of all, and you have other agendas that don't have to do with my health or don't have to do with my well-being. They have to do with your well-being and your funding and your growth. So it comes down to integrity of the people in these positions, whether it's a doctor or a politician or a bureaucrat. There's not a whole lot of integrity to go around right now. And I am trying my darndest to be a voice that's going to tell you the straight skinny on whatever's going on when it comes to this diet. Sometimes I may not mention some things because I can't fit everything in, and I beat myself up over that because I feel like I got to disclose everything. But at the same time, I like to have some privacy in my life, but I don't want to mislead you on anything. So I understand why some people that have good intentions get caught up in this too. It's just the way of the world. But ultimately, human freedom and taking responsibility for your own life and your own outcomes is going to be the key to your success. You know, I talk about freedom a lot because that is something that once it's lost, you can't get it back. But then there's the alternative, or the other end of the scale. Too much freedom and no responsibility is anarchy. Too much responsibility with no freedom is tyranny. And I don't think we need to be at either end of the spectrum. But I lean closer toward the freedom end of the spectrum, and letting our responsibility be subcontracted by bureaucrats and politicians is not the solution, because they're not considering what's important for you. They are considering what's important for them. And even those with the best intentions are going to run into brick walls on that. So it's with a lot of prayer that I started this message today. I hope it has been able to be concise and understandable. And I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts about taking control of your own life, being responsible for your own decisions, and living free as opposed to living told you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Make your own decisions and stop hurting yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself doesn't mean much if you don't think much of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. So let's get out there, get our walk in, keep exercising, take care of that body you got, put good fuel in it, like Lion Diet, ruminant meat, water, and salt. Let's go make your life what you want it to be. I'll see you next time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?